Investigating the puppy girl pandemic.
For a time, I was entrenched in puppy girl culture online. Am I still? Well, yeah, but now I get to write off all the collars I bought as a business expense.
Whoa. 99 callers, bro? Why? For what?
And if these don't get written
Oh,
off, I am fucked. Anyways, I'm going to acknowledge the absurdity of the subject matter now, and I understand that it is a
wait a minute. Yeah, hold on. I low key went into this without a lot of thought. Wait, what do you mean by like puppy girl culture, bro? Like, are we talking about like what's the name of the girl? Isn't it her name like Meow or something like that? The dog, the the girl that acts like a dog like a lot. I think her name is Meow. I don't know. Turkey Tom did a like piece on her. I think question mark. If I remember correctly, right? Somebody's gotta let me know. Somebody in the comments has to let me know, bro.
little silly. However, I think engaging critically with kink cultures within the trans
Also, I
community
love the
really reveals a lot
Nintendogs.
about how transness is seen at large and how subverting or leaning into those ideas help people within them build a sense of self. Also, it is just kind of funny. Man, someone should tweet that. What inspired this video and will be referenced heavily throughout is the research paper What Puppy Girls
Australian
Know, the
feminist
Inhuman
studies.
Pedagogy of a Trans Feminine Style, published in August of last year, written
They did a whole like research on this. Kind of want to look into it now. That's what.
by Jay Spielka. I find the points she brings up to be really interesting, and I hope to break down some of the key concepts found in her paper. I recommend you give it a read if you haven't already, but I'll do my best to make it understandable if you haven't. To know what puppy girls know, and to answer my question why there seems to be so many,
All right. Main question here: what do they know, and why are there so many?
we need to
Tell
first
me,
define what that even means. What are the shared characteristics and behaviors found among those who describe themselves
bro.
as
The
puppy
dog
girls
clips are
online?
so
Spielka
cute.
opts to call puppy girl culture an erotic style, a shared but constantly evolving set of aesthetics, narratives, and sexual scripts that can be further assumed, refused, tinkered with, or fundamentally reworked. In general, this erotic
Hmm.
style has been developed in online trans feminine spaces in which a presumed gay woman, usually young and white, assumes a highly sexualized, submissive role of a puppy. This can involve things like ears, tails, collars, leashes, whatever, but these items aren't necessarily
But like, it's not exclusively trans, though, right? Did I miss something? I don't think I did. Or is this study only focusing on? I think it might have already been stated. It might only be focusing on the trans community. And I I might not have paid as much attention as I thought I did. My fault.
what makes one a puppy girl. Rather, it's a set of ideas placed upon or adopted by an individual, usually involving things like general submission, dependence, vulnerability, and a low capacity for thought. These are quote unquote puppy like characteristics that we see time and time again expressed in these spaces. It's also important to not conflate this erotic style with the pup play subculture seen in predominantly gay male spaces. You can discern the difference between the two by paying attention to what clips
Okay.
politicians seem to keep on their hard drives. Do you think US Congressman Randy Fine understands the intricacies that differentiate pup play from puppy girls? I could I can explain it to him. Randy hit my line. Okay, so puppy girls tend to be trans
Randy
lesbians that
is my
express
line.
submissive behavior and lean into puppy-like qualities and characteristics. One thing that I was curious about was why is it trans lesbians specifically? Not to say it's exclusive to them, but why don't we see
Okay,
more
hold
cis
on.
lesbians or, God
This is
forbid,
the
straight
question
trans
I
girls
had. Hold
engaging
on.
in puppy girl culture? Well, I think this is for a couple of reasons. The first of which Spielka brings up being the long history of forced feminization fantasies found in erotic trans femme culture. This typically looks like having the identity of a girl, woman, female forced onto the subject in one way or another. I find these discussions are often difficult to have because so many people wrongfully hold the belief that being a trans woman is the result of this perceived fetishization of a forced womanhood. This is not the case. There's a lot to be said that I won't be getting into, but the forced femme erotic fantasies and and puppy girl culture are intertwined in several ways. The most apparent is the forcing of the title. While you can identify yourself as a puppy girl, and many do, that doesn't mean much without the reinforcement of that identity by those around you. I find that a big part of this culture comes in the form of teasing from others. This subtle or not so subtle reinforcement of your status as a puppy girl. Maybe having a clicker on your Discord soundboard saying good girl to make someone embarrassed, or pointing out those puppy-like behaviors in a condescending tone. And
I'm learning so much. I feel like a sponge right now. I'm sorry I've been kind of quiet. I feel like a freaking sponge just just intaking all this information
with all this said, inherently, being a puppy girl also makes one
because like I puppy girl I feel like just gets thrown onto anybody that like acts like a like a puppy girl. Like I don't know. I didn't know that this was like a term here in this community. I'm getting learned right now. My fault. I'm getting learned. That is what is important. I'm getting schooled and learned by this stuffed animal right here.
well, a girl. Thus, when these teasing behaviors are being expressed, not only does it work to hammer home one's puppy status, but also their status as a girl. Obviously, there are those who don't identify as a girl that participate in this culture. I think that's understood. I'm largely generalizing, of course. That affirming behavior to one's identity is a massive draw for young trans girls, but we'll put a pin in that for now. So, the why lesbians part of my original question is a little more nebulous and definitely overlaps with the transness aspect. Contrary to popular conservative rhetoric, trans women do indeed date each other, and in large numbers too. To prove this theory, I need every trans woman to DM me photos of them kissing their girl.
Whoa! Whoa! Dude, intrusive thoughts definitely won him out there.
Sorry, moment of weakness.
Yeah,
In my own
yep,
experiences, I
moment of
think that
weakness.
trans girls who are just coming out and being comfortable and expressing that side of themselves will often confide in other trans women first and foremost. And with a culture almost solely comprised of trans women, it's not really surprising to see a high percentage of T for T lesbianism. There's a lot of vulnerability, both physically, but more importantly, emotionally involved in being a puppy girl. So I think it makes sense that this space has a large number of lesbian identified women finding connections. Alright, so with the knowledge of what a puppy
Well, I feel like that would be just kind of the thing with any like sexual culture like that, right? Like you would only want to be vulnerable, or it would be easier to be vulnerable like that with people that have the same kind of like mentality slash shared ideal with you. So like obviously, while trans people don't only date trans people, but like I feel like it's easier for them to date somebody who deals with the same struggles that they do. Like, am I wrong for assuming that? And in a way, I kind of think of it like how more like traditional, what's the word, like racially traditional people will typically date like within their same race. At least I kind of see it that way, because like you would deal with the same problems, the same issues, like, and I feel like there's an easier understanding, so it's easier to relate to that. Granted, I'm basing this off of like my own personal experiences slash what I have personally seen with the people around me. So like I might be wrong. Take what I say with a grain of salt, but I feel like like what he just said makes sense. Anyways, back.
girl is and who comprises a large majority of puppy girls, what's the draw? What is the so-called puppy girl pandemic? And if that isn't the title of this video, that's gonna be really awkward. Honestly, I'm kind of late to the conversation about puppy girls. I see more deer girls, bunny girls, hell, even cat girls are making a resurgence.
I don't think that makes you late though, right? Like I didn't even think that this was like a topic of conversation. I mean, look at me. I'm a dear boy. Like what? But like, granted, I'm just a little VTuber. I'm just a silly little guy. But what is a dear girl? What have I thrown myself into? What kind of identification have I thrown myself into with this? Since I'm a dear boy who also has a dear girl model, I might need to do some research.
Though I think that puppy girl culture has ingrained itself in online transfem spaces more than any other insert cute animal girl prior, or that we've seen since. As stated previously, and at least anecdotally, I see an overwhelming amount of those engaging with puppy girl culture being young trans women. When I say young, while I am referring to literal age, I also think time on hormones or time spent after recognizing one's trans identity plays a big factor
Mhm.
in who stumbles into and stays in these spaces. The reason the second part is important, and quoting Spielke, it's simply hard for a trans woman to feel secure enough to be the source of her own affirmation. This is why external, community-based relationships are so vital for sustaining trans life. She continues by saying, many of us receive our gendered, sexed sense of self not from personal identity work, but through participation in networks of mutual care, love, and affirmation with other trans people, who are far more likely to gift us with unconditional recognition that we are ourselves. Puppy girls are an extreme case of just that. Meaning that, in general, it's tough to be your own number one supporter as a trans woman, as you have been so conditioned to tear yourself down through your own dysphoric lens. This is most prevalent in trans girls who are just starting to get a hold of who they are, grappling with an enormous vat of emotions that have been bottled up for a lifetime. So, coming into a community that provides that unconditional support, regardless of how you may perceive yourself or how others in daily life may perceive you, it's overwhelmingly affirming. There's the obvious caveat of this primarily being online and people being mean, particularly trans women love tearing down one another online, but I think it's understood that there
Well,
will always be bad.
is that? I mean, it's like it is just a cat fight. Women tear each other down regardless of if they're trans or not. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but y'all can play very dirty and nasty, and it's always so backhanded too. And that's probably why, like, whenever y'all try to diss guys, we just don't get it. Cause y'all are so backhanded with it. It does not stick. I can't tell half the time when people talk shit about me, or well, when like the women in my life have done that. All with love, though. All with love. Some of them without love, but that's neither here nor there.
Actors, or I guess bad actresses, regardless of how otherwise supportive a community may be. Being called a puppy girl is potentially the most affirming thing that you have experienced up until this point. It's cathartic to not have to prove anything to be bestowed with this label. The council has decided that you express puppy-like qualities, and so you are a puppy, but also, importantly, a girl. Spielke shares that her first encounters with this culture were through
Mm.
memes being shared in a trans Discord server. Then she says she became an active participant in sharing these memes herself. I think this is a pretty universal canon event among trans girls online. I'm not sure when I came across the term puppy girl for the first time, but I know it was early into my transition. And this may come as a shock to no one.
Oh, my fault. Her, she. I will correct that. This is like the first time that I stumbled across your channel. I apologize.
But I definitely liked the label of puppy girl and engaged with a lot of content surrounding the culture. Now though, I've fallen out of the so-called puppy girl pipeline, and there's a few factors that have caused that to happen. My hormone levels are like normal, so I think I think that's probably a factor, but I also never seriously entered these spaces. I found myself hanging around the outskirts, and I didn't see being a puppy girl as my entire identity. It was just kind of a funny thing that was nice and affirming. I was also fortunate enough to have support outside of online trans spaces, and so the puppy girl behavior was never really reinforced or encouraged by those who I hung out with. This isn't to say being a puppy girl is bad or anything, no, of course not. It's just that I kind of figured out it wasn't for me. There's more to it than just being affirming though, and through everything I've said thus far, I have largely ignored the puppy part of it outside of what it means to exhibit puppy-like behavior. This is because I think it varies a lot depending on the individual, and so everyone interacts with it in their own ways. One thing that is present regardless is the giving up or the removal of one's personhood. To be a puppy is to rid oneself of their humanness, to remove yourself from the social prejudices and struggles that are ever present when living as a trans woman.
I I don't know where this is going, but rid yourself of human things. Think it.
Even just for a moment. Not only that, but this is something that is encouraged and rewarded in this culture. As Spielka puts it, there is something liberating about the fact that the puppy girl's desire to debase herself for love, care, and recognition can be presented without the need to defend it as valid or permissible, just as there is a perverse pleasure in allowing oneself to be weak and pathetic without struggling to be anything more. A large part of her paper and her ultimate conclusion revolve around trans people's continued exclusion from a world which denounces exceptional gender expression and its definition of human. To quote again, the dominant modes of belonging to the category of human are rooted in cis-sexist, sanist, and racist ideas of who gets to count as a human. In fact, trans people continue to be routinely denied access to humanity by various social movements that seek to define humanity in such a way as to explicitly make it cis-only. The way this links back to everything we've been talking about is how, instead of trying to argue against this exclusion, the puppy girl culture gleefully engages in it for pleasure. If the category of human was never home for kinky transbians, it asks, why not leave it all together and become a puppy? I think one of the reasons I stopped engaging with puppy girl stuff online, thank God Twitter likes are private, you can't prove this otherwise, is that while it does feel good to remove yourself from all
You're
this stuff,
admitting
I
to it.
kept getting caught up on it.
You're admitting to it right now. What you mean?
Being temporary, a quick band-aid fix to a much larger issue. As I talked about in a previous episode, I'm someone who's struggled with a slew of dissociative problems in the past, like many others, and I didn't really like feeling that I was back in that headspace. Better YouTuber in person, Leadhead, has a video where she discusses the dissociative aspects of being a puppy girl through her own experiences and what it looks like when that gets taken too far. I really recommend.
Bro, I have never heard of this. This is my first time interacting with any of this type of content.
Watching that one. If you haven't, it's stuck with me for quite a while now. I think it all comes back to escapism, and being a puppy girl elicits a particular kind of escapist quality, and that not only are you leaving behind liberal ideas of gender or sexual identity, but there's that pleasure and even shame in indulging in this fantasy. In a way, it goes against a lot of what is being fought for and mirrors the downward social mobility faced by trans women in society. But here it's in a more controlled environment where you're assured love and affirmation for just existing. That's why I think it's so interesting, because while the idea of the puppy girl does subvert existing norms of what it means to express trans femininity, it also plays into the larger system that denies this expression in a shameful, kinky, pleasurable way, almost reclaiming the very system that necessitates this escapist act. Now, do I think Twitter user @GoodPuppy900 knows all of this? No, and I don't think any of this is really at the forefront of her mind right now. She's more focused on her Balatro run. But I think taking this kind of silly, pretty cringy subculture a little seriously can show us a lot about evolving ideas of what it means to engage with the world as a trans woman. Spielka's original question of what puppy girls know is answered at the end of her paper, where she writes, "This is what puppy girls know, that you don't have to fit in within the narrow constraints of the human to be loved, desired, and cared for, that you need not be valued for your capacity capacity to engage with fundamentally trans antagonistic structures of daily survival, that transness can be more than just an exercise in mimicking modes of living that were never meant for us. It's true, there are so many systems in place that actively or even unknowingly work to force trans people out of society. I don't need to tell you this. Chances are you're all too aware of how any given day another bill called the Fuck You I Hate Trannies Act will be signed into law. It's hard to find solace in a world.
Well, they aren't wrong. They they aren't really wrong on that end. That does tend to happen, sadly, but I feel like as a society we can try to move towards better, greener pastures.
World like that.
I'd
And so being
hope.
able to forget about all that just for a moment and be seen and loved for who you are is unbelievably important. A large
And I mean that statement for like everything and everyone, not just specifically for one community.
reason why we find puppy girls primarily online is because unless you live in fucking Seattle, chances are there aren't that many other trans people around. Being reminded that there is a community, that there are voices, is what keeps us all going. Okay, this is
Does Seattle have like a giant trans community? I'm learning a lot. In case y'all couldn't tell, I am learning a lot. I don't ever interact with this type of content, so this is new to me. A lot of this is new to me. I have I have and know of people who are trans or transitioning, but a lot of this is very new to me. So I feel like I'm learning.
getting a little too serious, so I'm gonna show you something funny I found that I didn't know like where to put. So botted blue check at swipe right in response to Spielke's paper being published had this to say. In other words, this paper suggests expanding the ideas of trans beyond crossing sex boundaries to include crossing species boundaries, which, is not the paper. But my favorite part of the tweet is it gets darker. yeah, yeah, man. This is some dark stuff. Like a puppy girl is a good girl. Oh my god, this is just too much for me. Anyways, I
Was that tweet trying to reference it in like a sense of like, big no interspecies type of things? Like, did I understand that right? Was that what they were grasping at? I haven't read the paper, as I've stated, but like, given what I know of the paper that has been presented to me by this, that was never presented, nor was it really alluded super heavily to. So I think we're just grasping at straws. But I mean, hey, you got that blue check mark, so you gotta farm the engagement. But I don't think that was it, Chief.
hope you took something away from this video. I debated on not making it for a very, very long time because it is kind of silly, but you know what? Sometimes you just want to be a little silly. This video would not have been possible without Jay Spielke's paper, as well as all the other papers she cites throughout it, which I also skimmed through a few of those. I also just think it's so cool that she wrote this. I don't know, it's a lot of fun. Now, if you excuse me, oh, fuck, it's the IRS. And for some reason, they didn't believe that the $20,000 I transferred to an offshore bank account was all for callers. They clearly don't understand how this will impact the Discord polycules.
All right. Uh, good video. This was all very new to me. Uh, my main question is, probably like, what is the essence of a dear boy slash girl then, if a puppy boy is used more in the gay male community, and then puppy girl is used more in the trans femme community? So like, what does that mean? What does that mean for for the deers out there. And also, what does that mean to the straight puppy girls? I think that's how that question would have been formatted to be the least the least likely to come off offensive. God, I'm so bad at this. Well, anyways, YouTube, come catch us live on Twitch. Uh, link to the video will be down in the description. I'm just a dude. I love you guys. Bye.